This will be a tutorial on how to use Xdebug in WordPress combined with LocalWP, and it is going to cover both how to use it with PHPStorm and how to use it with VSCode. To start with, I have created an Xdebug tutorial site in LocalWP, and very importantly, I turned on this Xdebug button. This makes it so that Xdebug is enabled on this server, and also here I have PHPStorm opened. Okay, so if I go to my browser and if I go to this site, Xdebug local, Xdebug tutorial.local, it is just a basic WordPress installation. Now let's suppose that I want to run Xdebug on this website. How do I go about it? Well, first of all, in LocalWP and PHPStorm, we need to configure the server that is going to be debugged. And the way we do that is we go to settings by pressing Ctrl-Alt-S, and then in PHP we have servers. And here we can add a server. I'm going to call this Xdebug tutorial.local. Host is Xdebug tutorial.local. And now there is also this port field. Now in LocalWP, the way it works is it assigns a different port to each server. So we need to figure out which port is our Xdebug tutorial server using. The way we can do that, I'm just going to click apply here for now. We can go to index.php, and right over here we can do var dump server. So that's going to dump all of the information about the server and also exit so that the rest of WordPress doesn't load. Now if I refresh the page, I'm going to get information about the server, and over here I can see the server port, which is this number, and I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to go back to PHPStorm and to servers configuration, and now I'm just going to set that as the port and hit apply and then OK. Now I'm going to delete this line and the site should be running again. And now if I go to PHPStorm, I can click this button which listens for debug connections, and then I can set a breakpoint anywhere I want. In this case, I will set it at the start of WordPress in index.php, right over here. And if I refresh the page, well, okay, actually, yeah, what it does. Okay, so it actually did hit a breakpoint, but the breakpoint it hit is in local-bootstrap.php. That is because LocalWP actually first runs a PHP file that does routing to our server, and then only then it hits our breakpoint. But this is not what we want, so I'm going to stop listening for Xdebug, and we can fix this by going to settings again, and here in debug we can say force break at first line with no path mapping specified. We can turn that off, and we can also turn off force break at first line when a script is outside the project. And so we're going to apply and hit OK. Now we're going to start to listen again, reload the page, and now we have hit the breakpoint. And now we can use this debug bar over here in order to navigate through the WordPress code. So there are these buttons here are the most important debugging tools, and they allow us to step through the code. And over here we can see the values of the constants and of the variables. So in this case, let's step over this definition of a constant, and then let's step into this blog header. And now we are literally going through the WordPress code and seeing how WordPress works line by line. In practice, you are not going to want to start debugging at index.php, but for example, maybe you want to start debugging in your theme or plugin, or maybe some third-party theme or plugin, in order to see how it works. And this is very useful because over here in the variables, you can see all of the global variables that are available to you, which gives you insight into how WordPress works. And you can also see all of the constants that WordPress defines, and it defines some cool constants, some of which people don't even know about. For example, it gives constants for converting sizes of bytes. It also has some constants for converting time and all other sorts of things. All right, so that is how you do debugging in PHPStorm. So now I'm going to stop listening and I'm going to terminate this connection. And now I'm going to close PHPStorm. And now let's see how I can do debugging with VSCode. So I'm going to open VSCode in the root directory where WordPress is installed. I trust the authors, and here under Run and Debug, I press Create a Launch.json file. And in this case, I want to debug PHP, so I click on PHP. And this is automatically going to set up a configuration file. In VS Code, in order to do debugging, it's a little easier than in PHPStorm. The only thing we need to do is set a breakpoint and then press Ctrl-Shift-P to open the command prompt and say debug start debugging. And this is now listening for debug connections. And so if I refresh the page, we are immediately hitting the breakpoint. There is no configuration necessary, and once again we can step through the WordPress code and see how WordPress works. In this case, the variables are on the left. The downside of VS Code is that it does not have as many cool features as PHPStorm. So PHPStorm is better at showing you variables, and it also gives you some cool options to do with variables, like printing and copying their values. In VS Code you cannot really do that, but it is very easy to set up, and it is still very useful. So that is how you do debugging for WordPress in PHPStorm and VS Code.